A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, there are all sorts of developments around crucial social issues in Victoria. Jasmine Yuen is the ACL State Director for Victoria. Jasmine, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thank you, Neil, and good morning. It's really good to be back in Vision.
Jasmine, let's talk about the hate speech laws, the anti-Villification and social cohesion bill passed the lower house just a couple of weeks ago. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, I would say this bill has been dragged on for a few months since last year until now, and is still not going to go away yet. Yeah, so the bill passed the lower house 2 weeks ago after 2 rounds of debate. That is passed with a government majority, but the Liberal National Party opposed the bill, whilst the Greens abstained. And the good news is that the bill passed with 2 House amendments. What it means is that these 2 amendments is actually moved by the government itself. And the 2 amendments are actually the political defense and also the religious defense, which is actually a good thing. If you allow me some time to go into it a little bit deeper. So the political defense amendments is actually requested by the Jewish community. And what the Jewish community wants is to prevent people from using political purpose as an excuse to vilify the Jews. But interestingly, the Muslim groups as well as the Greens also want this to be removed. And it's good that while the government listen to the Jewish community and have that removed. And another defense being amended is the religious defense, which is a win for us, Christian. And there is something that ACL has been advocating for. So the good thing to see is that the government actually reinstated the word proselytizing in the bill and also added in the word preaching. So what it means is that in terms of preaching at church and teaching the Bible in the Bible study and also street evangelism, it will be having better protection. Now, on this, I would like to really thank Premier Jacinta Allen and her advisor for engaging with ACL all these months and listening to the Christian community. That is actually a good thing. Good sign.
Well, it's very, very rare, isn't it, that we might pause and say, a congratulations to the Allen government in Victoria. But to hear that coming from the Australian Christian lobby, because there are some amendments in there which actually, it would seem to me too, around those, Jasmine, there's some common sense in that, and there is some protection for Christians in church and the way that Christians might conduct themselves in being able to engage in the debates. So just focus in on that for a few moments. The amendments that have been made, and they were, as you say, coming from the Allen government, and they are going to, in some sense here, guarantee more freedom than you might have anticipated with the original wording in that bill.
Yes. Even though there are 2 amendments made by the government, I would have to say and emphasize that it is still not enough for ACL or any Christian to support this bill, is because there is more problems in the bill that can be actually fixed by any of the amendments. And actually, I just see that there is no amendments can fix the flaws in this bill. Now, there is one more amendment moved by the opposition. In fact, they are offering a bipartisan support for the bill if the government agrees with them to move another amendment. And that amendment is actually to remove 4 words with the protected attributes from the reasonable person test. Now, I know that Michelle has explained what the reasonable person test means last week, so we are not going to go to the nitty-gritty of that. But by removing that 4 words from the reasonable person test, it actually will improve the bill by making sure that the complaint process or a trial, if there is one, is fair and less biased. But as I mentioned, even though we have all 3 amendments in this bill, it is still not enough to prevent Christian or any Victorian from being referred to or reported to the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission because of the low and subjective vilification threshold that is still in the bills. Now, what it means is that any one with a protected attributes, if they find that what we say, what we do, and what we write in emails and on a social media post, if they find that it is causing offense or even likely to cause offense to them, we will still be reported to the VOC, unfortunately. And there will be a complaint process that we need to go through, including a triage process. And that is exactly a complaint process that we want to prevent Christians from going through. So despite amendments, this bill is not doing any good for any Victorians, nor Christians.
Okay, so when we talk about those lower courts, the Equal Rights, Equal and Opportunities Commission, and there's other ones too, when those courts are in fact available for anyone who feels offended to be able to drag you before the courts, this is where Christians are oftentimes, this is where the painful process of being dragged before the court makes all the difference to the person who's making a complaint. What would you like to see? I mean, ought those lower courts be abolished? I mean, do they serve a purpose? What are your thoughts here?
Well, on top of that 3 amendments, to give Christians a better protection, there are 2 things that we can amend further, which is to totally remove the Section 102D in the civil provision, which is the section that is specifically mentioning the reasonable person test. Another one that I would suggest is to remove all the word likely from the bill. Now, this is at least there is some safeguard for Christians, but at the end, I just don't think that this bill is needed. And there is a Jewish human rights advocate also agree that this kind of law is unnecessary, is because there are other laws that is enough to protect the Jewish community and tackle anti-Semitism. And in fact, there is precedence in this. The Jewish friends that I have, he actually himself and his 2 children, young children at that time, being racially abused on the streets and being punched on the face because of his Jewish ethnicity. And that happened more than 10 years ago. And he was actually using the current Racial and Religious Tolerance Act on top of others laws as well to actually got those abusers or bullies convicted, and also have the Victorian Police Commissioner apologize to him publicly. And so this is what we see. This kind of hate crime laws is not necessary at all. In fact, as my friend, the Jewish friends say, it is not about extra laws that we need. It's actually law enforcement in Victoria is what we need.
Okay, so this bill that we're talking about today, you're saying it's coming from lots of sectors. This is not even necessary. There are other acts, there are other legislation that actually covers these things. Hey, let me ask you, because this passed the lower house just a couple of weeks ago, and as I understand it, there's going to be a couple of days debate this week. So is this an opportunity for listeners today to actually have their say around these sorts of vilification laws in Victoria?
Yes, it's very important. In fact, it will be very helpful for all Victorians to write to the Premier and also the Liberal National Party MPs, especially those in the upper house. Now, what I heard is that the Liberal National Party is a little bit shaky in their position while they oppose the bill in the lower house. But after the political defense, there is actually pressure coming from the Jewish groups for them to support the bill. So there is a bit of perhaps disagreements, or, among them, some want to support the bill and some not. So I just encourage all Victorians to not only write to them, but pray for them. Especially today, they have the Shadow Cabinet meeting, and tomorrow they will have the party room meeting where they will have to vote for the position. So pray for them and continue to email them. And another groups of MPs in the upper house are the crossbenchers, someone like Jeff Gorman, Adam Somurek, and also One Nation, Liki Lee Tira. So these three are really important to email them before tomorrow when the Parliament resumes sitting.
Well, for listeners, if you want to take some action listening in Victoria today, there might be some things that there to communicate with those MPs. Hey, Jasmine, so far as the anti-vilification laws, let's move on from there because there's some other issues going in Victoria too. Voluntary assisted dying. This law goes back to being passed in Victoria back to 2017, but there's a review that's ready to happen.
Yes, so it has. The review is done and dusted, and we just have the report, 5 years review report, just released 2 weeks ago. And as we all know, in Victoria, the euthanasia law is the very first one in our nation. So because of that, our euthanasia law is considered the most conservative because of all the safeguards and all those very strict procedure that applicants have to go through. But under this 5 years review and from the public or the patient feedback as well, it is actually telling the community that some of the procedure is actually a barrier or prevent them to access VAD easily. So the report come back to suggest the government to expand the law. Now, it is quite a few things that is concerning us. One big one is that the suggestion is for doctors to discuss euthanasia with patients as one of the options. One concerning bit that is on the government media release is that they want even health professionals who can conscientiously object to VAD will still be required to provide minimum information to patient. It's because in the report, it suggests that conscientious objection is inconsistent with person-centered care. So what it means is that Christian doctors and nurses will be forced to mention VAD to patients despite it being against the Christian faith. Another expansion of the law will see that the applicants will be eligible if they have 12 months of life expectancy that is increased from 6 months. And there is another requirement is currently there are 3 doctors need to approve the applicants, but it will cut down to 2 under the new law. And the government is committing to rewrite the law in order to go in line with other jurisdictions.
So it was Victoria first cab off the rank back in 2017. And we were all aghast when those VAD laws came into being then. And now all these years on, there is a review that's going on. And because there's other states that have made much more progressive VAD euthanasia laws, now Victoria is saying we need to catch up and do things a little bit more seriously like some of the other states. That's actually, it's quite seriously a blight on all of those states around those sorts of laws. As Christian believers, we would say every life has value. And so when you think of this, and just a little personal note from you here, Jasmine, because when we talk about the doctor offering options to people who might be suffering some sort of illness, to be offered euthanasia in the doctor's chair, it just goes against our morality, doesn't it? To offer someone that maybe you should just end it.
Not only against the moral, from a moral perspective or from a biblical perspective, but also is against their training. We all know that doctors and nurses are trying to save lives and improve lives, and therefore there is where the treatments and healings is going on. But having doctors and nurses to suggest VAD, that is assisted dying, is pretty much suggesting to a patient to commit suicide. And that is just against all the training that they have been, going through. Now, the Bible tells us that we need to speak life, not to speak death. But unfortunately, having them to do so is just speak death into patients. And also, this concerning bit is to pretty much remove the conscientious objection from the faith-based or Christian medical professional is just mind-blowing.
Well, there's lots of things that go along with what we've often talked about as a slippery slope, and it looks like Victoria is on the slippery slope continuing just to worsen those VAD laws. More slippery slopes too. Just one quick one to add to the end of our conversation. Medicinal cannabis users now can legally drive in Victoria if they're not impaired. What's just quickly an update on where things are headed with that?
Yeah, so it started on the 1st of March, just 2 days ago. So what I want to quickly say that is the government actually conducted a medicinal cannabis driving trial last year. And the trial is to find out whether it's safe for people to drive under the influence of THC, which is one of the components in the cannabis. Now, I just have to say that the trial is done in a remote regional area, and not at all on the BC Melbourne suburban roads in which traffic is so different. And to date, we haven't seen any report being released about that trial. And I'm not quite sure how that trial went. And I just have great doubts about the credibility of that trial. And having the government to allow medicinal cannabis users to drive on our roads without even public consultation or releasing a report is just sheer negligence, irresponsible, and putting Victorian drivers at risk. So this is something that we really need to concern about and write to the government.
And you think it's probably more a part of a push to decriminalise cannabis use for adults, and that's more likely to be what that's all about?
Yes, definitely. So I have just sit in a medicinal use for adults inquiry 2 weeks ago. And definitely there is a push there. Unfortunately, we just have these two legalized cannabis party MPs sitting in the upper house, and they themselves are cannabis user or medicinal cannabis users, and they just push the government into that direction. And just mind you, Fiona Patten is their mentors. And you know that Fiona Patten is making a comeback in the federal election as well, running as the Senate candidate for the legalized cannabis party. Yes, so there is definitely a big push there.
Okay. Well, Jasmine, always appreciate your updates, taking us into some of the nitty-gritty and some of the developments that are happening in your backyard in Victoria. Jasmine Yuen is the ACL State Director for Victoria. You can connect with Jasmine through the ACL website, acl.org.au. That's ACL, stands for Australian Christian Lobby, acl.org.au. Jasmine, thanks so much for taking some time to share these thoughts with listeners today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.